name is Natasha Chang, and I'm here with Stephen J. Kung to talk about his directorial debut film, A Leading Man. Stephen, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. So I watched it, I loved it,
Thank you.
I want to know what inspired the film.
I wrote the film when there was a lot of anti-Asian discrimination and racism going on in the media. There was a show called, Linsanity was becoming big, and there was all this backlash from the media, and people were just glossing over it and saying that it was okay. And there was also a show, Aliens in America, which was on the air that I found really offensive, and another show, it's about Outsourced. It was a primetime comedy on NBC that was also very offensive. And I was like, why is this okay? You know, we can't, if this were any other ethnicity, we would be making fun of. The minorities in this country would be in an uproar, but because it was Asian Americans, maybe we're too nice or too apathetic or acquiescent. I'm an activist. I believe in standing up for what I believe in. When I saw this happening, I was like, I have to make a film about this.
Right. And so what was the feeling like on set? Did you feel like you were kind of making something pretty special, pretty eye-opening?
Well, there's been a lot of movies about Asian American representation in the media. They've all been documentaries, and no one's really made a narrative fiction before. And so I'm a strong believer that narrative fiction can have a strong power, even be more influential than documentaries. Because when you watch a documentary, it's by nature didactic. Some might say it's medicinal. But when you watch a narrative feature, you open yourself up to, you suspend your disbelief and buy into the world in order to go along with the story. And I feel like that can be a very persuasive and compelling power and argument. So I also worked under my mentor, Edward Saxon, produced Philadelphia, right, which changed the dialogue and the landscape for LGBT rights in this country. Beforehand, there were always documentaries about it, but when you make a narrative fiction, it gets people talking about it because it's entertainment, so people want to see it. And so that was my idea for A Leading Man, that it would be a movie people want to see, it's entertaining, and at the same time it will elevate the dialogue on this very important topic.
Right, and the movie kind of comes in full circle. It's kind of like starts off in the hallway and it ends in the hallway with someone kind of leaving the industry. That's not so hopeful. Did you kind of know that was the kind of ending you wanted when you were writing the script?
The ending was actually up for debate all the way up till the very end. We got a bunch of notes on it, but in the end, I thought it was the right ending for the picture. And there's a spoiler alert coming up, but basically, what happens is I don't see it's a very honest ending because. In my experience, you go to Hollywood, you meet a bunch of friends, you all swear you're going to rise up together and help each other get to the top. And then as the years go by, there's attrition. Like half of your friends leave the industry, they get burnt out. And then it just happens too much. And if we want to talk about real, honest Hollywood stories, that's a real, honest Hollywood story. That's what happens, especially with Asian actors, because there's so little work for them.
Right. There's kind of like this ceiling that they can't really break through almost.
Right. The original ending actually was a little bit more ambiguous. It had GQ on his way to the airport and then Rachel giving him a call as he was about to board the plane. And she says, look, I found the role of a lifetime for you. It got picked up straight to series. Do you want to come back? And then we end on him making the decision. And that was the ending for like almost a half a year. And then after that, some people were into the ambiguity and other people weren't. And then I decided that after taking people on a 90-minute journey, I feel like people deserve a concrete answer.
Right.
And I feel like with all the seeds he's sown, there's only one real way to pay it off, right? And at this point, I think GQ is so disgusted with himself. He needs some time off. He needs a rebirth, and he needs a new chapter in his life.
Right.
And I feel like it's a very earned ending.
Right. So Asian Americans, I think it's safe to say that they kind of reign supreme on YouTube and in new media, reality TV shows. They're pretty prominent on all these platforms. Do you think Hollywood will ever set its sights on YouTube to sort of get new talent? There's a whole stream of new talent on YouTube.
Yeah, they're already doing it. I'm not too familiar with the new media landscape, but I know they're already doing it. they recruit actively off of them, and people who have big YouTube shows, even small YouTube shows, get recruited to run shows for the networks,
Right.
or they sign deals with the major talent agencies. So I definitely think they're looking that way.
Right. And I was watching this interview with Raven Symone where she was talking with Oprah, and she made this comment where she says, "I'm tired of being labeled. I'm not African American, I'm American." So if someone were to say that about an Asian American, how would you react to that?
I think everyone's entitled to their own perspective, and just I might identify a certain way, and that's the totality of my experience, but
Right.
who's to say someone else's experience could be, they're different. I know their experience is completely different from mine, so people should identify however they want to identify.
Right. And have you ever had a bad experience with racism? Has anyone ever come up to you and been like, "Oh, I've accidentally mistaken you for someone else. I'm sorry, you all look the same"?
Oh yeah, I've got my story. I think as Asian Americans, when you grow up in Virginia, everyone gets teased at one point or another, like King Kong, or like, do you know Kung Fu, blah, blah, blah. But as an adult, my favorite story is the encounter with the LAPD, the notorious LAPD. Yeah, I was driving a Beetle, and I ran a yellow light. It was yellow, and I got
Okay.
pulled over by the police, who said I ran a red light. And they asked me for my keys to my car. They put the keys on top of the bug, and then they said, "Do you speak English?" After speaking to me in English, I'm like, "Yes." And then he went around the car and made fun of how beat up my car was. And like racism is a little bit like obscenity. It's not explicit. People don't hurl epithets at you, but you know it when you see it, right?
Right.
And so I wasn't going to stand for it. So I went to the LAPD to file a report, and there was a very nice white guy at the counter, and I was like, "I'd like to file a report, and I feel like I was the victim of racism." And he's like, "1 second, please." He leaves, and out comes an Asian lady, a Chinese woman, like her last name is Liu. She's like, "Can I help you?" I was like, "Yeah, I felt like I was the victim of racial discrimination." And she said, "Oh, and what race would that be?" And I'm like, "Well, Miss Liu, I'm Chinese like you." She's like, "You don't look Chinese to me." Yeah, as if that,
What?
Yeah, so that's my encounter with racism, with the LAPD. But you're probably talking about Hollywood. And yes, I've definitely got those stories too. When I was working as an assistant, as a movie executive, assistants listen in on their executives' call all the time. And
Right.
the things, because they don't know your ethnicity on the line, so the things they would say, you're completely invisible, and you're privy to all like the secret conversations. Like we had a black female director attached to a project, and this Fox executive, she was like, "Oh yeah, we're not gonna, you can't attach Matt Damon to this movie because we can't have like a big white guy working on the direction of a black woman." And I was like, that is not cool,
That makes no
Yeah.
sense. What? Okay.
Yeah.
So but in terms of working in the Hollywood industry, has anyone ever not offered you a job because of your race?
You don't. It's impossible to tell. I know what. As people, as social beings, we tend to hang out with our own kind, right? And
Right.
so, I think there are a lot of social barriers to Asians getting into the industry, because if you grow up white or black or Latino and you primarily hang out with people of your own ethnicity, when you hire people to be in a writer's room with you, where you have to hang out with people like 12 plus hours a day, you're going to hire people you're most comfortable with.
Right.
So if people are if people don't have a diverse group of friends, they might not hire you. Not because they explicitly don't like people of your ethnicity, but because they're more comfortable with people of their own kind. And
Right.
it's not an explicit form of racism. It's not even racism. It's just a racial barrier,
Right.
and that's unfortunate.
And because you've had so much experience working in Hollywood, if someone comes up to you and says, "Stephen, I'd like some advice. I want to break into the industry. What do I do?" What would you say?
I would say move to LA, because that's where all the action is. That's the first piece of advice. And the second piece of advice is I would be prepared to be poor for a long time and starve yourself, because in Hollywood you have to pay your dues to get ahead. And it's unfortunate, but the way, Hollywood is an apprenticeship system, which means that you have to basically work for free for for a higher executive or a director or a writer for a couple of months before you can start making money on your own. So save up the money and move to LA.
All right. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for talking with us. If you like what you saw and you'd like to see more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter.
And can I pitch the Leading Man social media stuff?
Yes.
So like A Leading Man on Facebook and follow us on Twitter @LeadingManMovie.